Utah, a land where ancient mesas rise from the red desert, where canyons echo secrets no one asked to hear, and where what lies under the surface is older and stranger than we dare to admit. This episode, we take you to the land of legends and silence, a place where science, folklore, and fear collide. We unravel 3 tales. One about a ranch too strange to explain. Another about a small town and a tithing house that buried more than grain. And finally, a dusty stretch of land where pioneers died and never truly left. So, keep your lights low and your thoughts clear. I'm Drifter Voyages, and this is the 50th Room Podcast.
Bleed.
In the northeast corner of Utah, nestled in the basin of the Uintah Mountains, sits a stretch of land that seems to reject explanation. A ranch, 480 acres of high desert and red dirt, once known for its cattle, now known for something far more elusive. Locals call it Skinwalker Ranch. Scientists call it a living lab of fear. And the Ute people, who have inhabited this region for generations, they call it cursed. In 1994, a ranching family, Terry and Gwen Sherman and their 2 children, moved onto the property. It seemed ideal, isolated, fertile, remote. But on the day they arrived, they noticed something strange. Every door inside the ranch's house was bolted from both sides. Closets, hallways, even cupboards. As if something needed to be kept out or needed to be kept in. That same week, a wolf the size of a sedan approached the family corral. It was massive, its fur a steel gray, and it didn't act like any wild animal they'd ever seen. It didn't growl, didn't bare its teeth. It simply walked up to a calf and clamped its jaws around the animal's head. Terry fired a handgun into its side, and nothing. The creature didn't flinch. More bullets, no blood, no wounds. When it finally let go, it turned and trotted off. Later, Terry tracked it into the underbrush, but the paw prints simply stopped. Now, to understand Skinwalker Ranch, you have to look deeper, much deeper. The land once formed part of the disputed territories between the Ute and Navajo tribes. During the 19th century, after decades of raids and betrayal, the Navajo were pushed off the land, violently. Some Ute elders believe the Navajo cursed it on their way out. They left behind stories of the Yi-Nadoshi, a skinwalker, a malevolent witch, often described as a shapeshifter, who wears the skin of an animal and walks between worlds. The Ute, to this day, will not step foot on the property. They say it belongs to something else, something that watches. The wolf was just the beginning. The Shermans reported seeing blue orbs the size of basketballs hovering near their livestock. One night, 3 of their dogs chased one of these lights into the woods. What followed was silence. Until morning, when Terry found 3 perfect circles of scorched earth, and no more dogs. There were other things to note too. Loud metallic machinery clanking sounds underground with no apparent source. Cattle mutilations, organs removed with surgical precision, and no blood to be found. And then shadows in the sky, and occasionally, shapes crawling out of thin air. In 1996, billionaire Robert Bigelow purchased the property. Through his research group, NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science. He funded scientific surveillance of the ranch. Cameras were installed, sensors, radiation counters. And yet, something always stayed one step ahead. In one recorded instance, a physicist observed a glowing blue humanoid figure emerge from what he described as a circular rip in space, roughly 20 feet in the air. It crawled down as if through an invisible tunnel and ran into the night on all fours. Despite the sensors, very little hard evidence was collected. Cameras would fail, batteries would drain. The most compelling data came in whispers. Erratic electromagnetic readings, GPS anomalies, and animals refusing to enter certain pastures. One security guard claimed anonymously, "I saw a hole open in the sky, and something slithered out. I stopped working the next day." Skeptics point out the obvious. No peer-reviewed evidence, no verified video, and yet the stories keep coming. Even under new ownership, and with the show The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch documenting every angle, the strangeness hasn't stopped. UFO sightings, animal deaths, disappearing equipment, and perhaps most chilling, the undeniable and persistent feeling of being watched. Skinwalker Ranch sits at the crossroads of folklore and fringe science. A place where stories older than the state itself collide with government contractors and television crews. Is it haunted by a skinwalker, maybe? Visited by something not even of this earth? Or is it simply the most elaborate mass hysteria ever recorded? Maybe it's all in our heads. Or maybe some places open wider than others, to memory, to myth, and to something else entirely. And when they open, you're not the only thing looking in.
Skinwalker eyes in the canyon wall, silent still, but they see it all.
Skinwalker Ranch is a place of science and legend, but not all haunted places are loud. Some are almost too quiet, and that's when the dead can breathe the loudest. Now we travel north to a building older than the town around it.
Something still opens that door. Fires burn on empty stone, ancient names carved into bone. This land don't sleep, this ground don't give, it just decides who gets to.
Brigham City, Utah. Now I want you to close your eyes and picture this with me. Tidy streets, brick storefronts, and that quiet stillness you only find in places founded on both faith and fear. In the mid-1800s, pioneers settled here under the vision of Brigham Young himself, carving order out of the desert scrub. It was a town built on tithing, and at its heart was a modest warehouse. The Tithing House, a place to store offerings for the faithful. Wheat, barley, cured meats, shoes, sometimes even coffins. And according to some, things not meant to be stored at all. Today it stands rotted and sealed, forgotten by zoning maps and fenced with rusted chain link. But stories, like grain spilled from a torn sack, tend to scatter far and wide, and some of them never stop moving. In 1998, 4 teenagers, thrill seekers on a dare, broke into the abandoned tithing house. It was Halloween night. Now I know where you think this is going. This sounds like something straight out of one of those old 80s horror slasher flicks. Flashlights, laughter, the thrill of stepping where you weren't supposed to. These teenagers, they didn't expect to find a basement, or the door to it unlocked. Just after midnight, one of them, a girl who we will call Lacey, wandered off. The other teens called for her. They searched every room, but she was just gone. 3 hours later, she was found curled into a tight ball beneath broken floorboards. Her fingernails bloodied, her eyes wide, and when she finally spoke, her voice was distant, almost borrowed.
He's still counting the grain,
She said.
and he knows who hasn't paid.
The tithing house, once administered by the local bishop, processed goods for redistribution, charity for the poor, provisions for missionaries. But with no refrigeration and disease spreading easily, records show it was also quietly used as a place to isolate the sick. One local historian uncovered a journal from a bishop, Elas Potter, dated 1884. We were told to make room for the fevered ones. I did as I was told, but they kept coughing, even after the grain was sealed. One child would not stop crying. I buried him in barley. The Lord will forgive me. Then the journal abruptly ends. Later, a forgotten blueprint of the building surfaced in a county archive, showing a crawl space that doesn't appear in the public record. The beams inside the crawl space bear long horizontal scratches, as if someone tried to claw their way out. Since the finding of the crawl space, the building has drawn the curious and the cursed. A janitor hired in the 1970s to maintain the grounds quit after 3 weeks. He claimed he saw a tall man in a brimmed hat standing behind him in the restroom mirror. When he turned, the room was empty, except for the smell of dry rot and something older, almost like dried blood. In the early 2000s, a local contractor tried to restore the structure for historical tours. The nails wouldn't stay in the walls. Tools went missing. And one morning, he woke up with the word tithe carved into the skin of his forearm. Not cut, but burned like a brand. A paranormal team visited in 2014. They set up infrared cameras, EMF readers, and EVP recorders. What they captured made rounds on regional forums. Every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., a knock came from beneath the floor. 13 beats, always the same. They thought it might be plumbing, but there was no water connected to the building. And the knocks responded when asked questions. When one of the team asked aloud, "Who's down there?" the EVP caught something faint. A whisper, female, foreign. "They buried me." The building is now condemned, but not forgotten. Just last year, police reports listed a call from a nearby neighbor who saw movement in the upper floors. A type of pacing, they said. When officers arrived, they found no signs of entry, no staircase, no second floor, because the floorboards up there were torn out decades ago. Locals now say the tithing house has its own guardian, not for gold or goods, but memory, that it keeps accounts the old ways, quiet and thorough, and that if you trespass, it will take note, and maybe it will collect. Some debts don't appear on paper, and some offerings were never meant to be accepted. In Brigham City, they say a man still walks the dark green corridors of the old tithing house, counting, watching, and waiting for the rest to be paid. In Utah's wilderness, the past is just under the dust. The trails, the ghost towns, the passings. Some places refuse to forget what happened there. Now we ride out to a place so empty, it echoes back.
They bleed. Lanterns flicker at the mind's dead throat, where ghost men sing in sunken note. A shovel falls, no hand in sight, and the canyon groans at morning.
West of Lehi, Utah, there is a stretch of high desert scrubland where the earth is pale, dry, and reluctant to give anything back. It's a place called 5 Mile Pass. Most people know it today as an off-road haven, a weekend getaway for ATV riders, dirt bikes, and thrill seekers. But the dust they kick up doesn't just hang in the air. It clings to everything, even to memory. Because 5 Mile Pass has always been more than just open land. It's a burial ground of bodies, of stories, and of something still unsettled. In the 1800s, 5 Mile Pass was a gateway. First for the Mormon pioneers, then for prospectors, and then for the Pony Express. And with every new wave of hope came a trail of violence. Ambushes were common, both by outlaws and desperate men with nothing left to lose. Miners spoke of collapses that swallowed whole crews. Diaries from the 1850s tell of starvations, duels, suicides, and something worse. A creeping paranoia that gripped travelers at night. One pioneer woman wrote, "The hills whisper after dark. I hear them saying my name." Today the graves are unmarked, the mines are sealed, but the voices, well, some say they never stopped. In 2006, a group of ATV riders camped near the main trailhead. Around dusk, they noticed something strange. A lone horse and rider just off the ridge. At first glance, nothing seemed wrong. Until one of them pointed out that they noticed the rider's face wasn't there. Not hidden, not obscured. Just gone. Blank as the sky. When they rode closer, the figure turned and vanished into the dry wind. No prints, and no trace left behind. Just a cold silence that lingered long after. In multiple 19th century journals, there are mentions of wandering women, seen walking alone along the pass at night. Their dresses are often described as torn, their faces streaked with blood. Some were believed to be ghosts of women who died in childbirth along the trail. Others were said to be widows, left behind during wagon raids. And one reoccurring legend speaks of a woman in a dark shawl who stands motionless on the trail's edge, weeping. But when approached, she disappears, and the ground where she stood is unnaturally cold. One of the oldest stories tied to 5 Mile Pass is that of the Pony Express rider. They say he was ambushed by thieves just before reaching his post. But rather than surrender the mail pouch, he fled into the night, wounded and alone. His body was never found. But every few years, campers report hearing hooves pounding across the sand long after midnight. Always coming, but never arriving. In 2015, a family camping just south of the old pass woke to a strange sight. Their fire, long dead and cold, had been relit. Sitting beside it was a man in a dusty coat, staring into the flames. He didn't speak, he just hummed, a low, tuneless murmur that made their skin crawl. When they turned on a flashlight, he was gone, but the logs still burned, and no one could explain how. From 1993 onward, park rangers documented something disturbing. Visitors, hikers, bikers, even organized groups would go missing for hours or even days. When found, they couldn't explain what happened. Some were dehydrated, bruised. One man was found curled up in a mine shaft that had been sealed for over 50 years. He had no memory of how he got there. A ham radio enthusiast once claimed to pick up strange transmissions from the hills near 5 Mile Pass. Morse code, no known source, no logical explanation. When translated, the message repeated only one thing: "Help, stop them. Help, stop them. Help, stop them." Again and again. And then, Last but certainly not least, there's the tale of the hiker, name withheld for privacy, who found an antique revolver half buried in a dry creek. It was cleaned, oiled, ready to fire. He brought it home. That night, he dreamt of a man with no eyes, a man who stood at the foot of his bed and whispered,
You took my voice.
The next morning, the hiker couldn't speak. His voice returned slowly, over weeks, but he never kept that gun. He returned to the desert and placed it right back where he found it. 5 Mile Pass may not look like a battlefield, but the land remembers every footfall, every drop of blood, every silent scream lost to time. Some say the spirits here aren't angry, just unfinished, still walking, still humming, still waiting for someone to listen. If you ride through 5 Mile Pass and you feel like you're not alone, if you hear hoofbeats when there are no horses around, if the wind calls your name in a voice that sounds like your own, turn back. Not everything buried wants to stay that way. And there you have it. 3 supposedly true scary tales from the shadows of Utah. From the red sands of Uintah County to the dust-covered trails of 5 Mile Pass. Utah is a land full of echoes, some man-made, and some far older. The desert keeps its secrets, but sometimes it lets them lay out in the sun for all to see. Thank you for listening to the 50th Room podcast. If you made it through this episode, maybe something followed you back, maybe not. Just make sure the house is quiet tonight. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. It helps more than you know. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And subscribe on YouTube. If you have tales of your own, please send them in. I love reading your stories. Stay cautious, stay curious, and remember, out in the desert, there's no one to hear you scream, except the ones already buried there. Stay haunted.
Wind is a voice, the dust is a shroud, the spirits speak without being